President Joe Biden begins an overseas trip that will take him from India to Vietnam. First up, the G20 Summit in New Delhi, where leaders are scheduled to discuss everything from food and energy security to the global economy. President Joe Biden lands in India after an overnight flight on Air Force One. In June, the president hosted Prime Minister Narendra Modi for a formal state visit at the White House. The meeting today in India was closed to the press.
This meeting will be taking place at the Prime Minister's residence. So it is unusual in that respect. This is not your typical bilateral visit to India with meetings taking place in the Prime Minister's office.
The U.S. and India are working together to resist threats from China. Prime Minister Modi also defends his own country's human rights record despite ongoing attacks against Christians in India. This weekend, he'll host the G20 Summit, bringing together leaders from around the world. Back here in the U.S., the Director of National Intelligence outlines another threat, cybersecurity, and what it will take to protect people.
We recognize that so much of what's outside of government is part of our attack surface, so to speak, right? That, whether it's critical infrastructure that's mostly owned by the private sector or it's sectors of our private sector, like in the technology areas that we're, need to focus on in order to help them protect themselves because they are of such importance from a national security perspective.
And Vice President Kamala Harris, who just returned from a summit in Indonesia, announces a series of pro-abortion speeches. She plans to visit a half a dozen campuses in what she is calling the Fight for Our Freedoms College Tour. But SBA Pro-life America earlier wrote, the U.S. shares abortion law standards with human rights abusers like China and North Korea, adding Democrats want to keep it that way.